Welcome to the Code With Me videos for Chapter 4. This is the first video in the Chapter 4 series only because the previous sections didn't really require videos. For this one, we'll be jumping into Activity 4.6 and 4.7 and 4.8. So the first thing is, if you don't already have the Chapter 4 project in brackets, please go ahead and load it up. If anything, load up the Vacations folder in it. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take the Chapter 4 folder, drag it into brackets, and there we go, we have all the folders. So here we have Vacations, and that's the one I'll be working with. So go ahead and pull up the index file, and with this, we'll actually be adding images to this file right here. If you take a look inside of Vacations, you can see we have a folder called Images, and inside that we have images as well. Well, what we're going to do is we're actually going to be adding those to this. So the first thing we need to do is we need to click to the right of the opening P tag, which is right here, and we'll be typing the following. We'll be adding an image with the image tag, specifying the source, and specifying the alternative text. If you want, you can self-close it. It's not specifically required, but I like to do it as good practice. So for the source, one thing we're going to be doing is specifying the diving JPEG. And the alternative text is Mediterranean Sea Adventure. Make sure I spell Mediterranean right. Good, no red line. Okay, now we're good developers, so we go ahead and save. We go back to the browser, we refresh, and what happened? The image didn't load. Well, if you recall from the videos, we actually have the image in a different folder than the location of the file itself. What we need to do is we need to specify the folder images. How do we do that? Well, easy. We type in the word images, and we add the delimiter between the two, telling the browser where to look for that file. So now, we save, we go back, we refresh, and boom, we got a fish. All right. So the next item that we're going to be doing is we're actually going to be adding the remaining images. So in this case, we're going to be adding the images after the closing H2 tag on line 11. Line 11, right here. Here we go. Popular vacation packages. Enter new line. Good. Now, you can either copy my code or you can just copy and paste and modify however you want to get the rest of these items in. Image source. That is not what I want. Image source. Images. All right, so we've just added all four of these files to the browser. Let's make sure we save and refresh to make sure that the files themselves are actually loaded. We refresh, and good, we have all four of the files here. All right, now if you actually have the items here, it should actually load up, and what we're going to be doing next is we're actually going to be exploring the white space. Now, if you have all of these images on different lines, what's actually happening is the browser will automatically add a white space between them, just like it adds white space between letters and words when you have a space. Well, in this case, the new line character that's telling the system that we have a new line is actually generating a space by itself. So how do we get rid of this little space section right here? Well, what we do is we actually take all these images and put them on the same line. Seems a little weird, but let's try it out. Delete that, and delete that. So now, it's just one big line with four images. If we go back and save, we go to the browser, we refresh, you can see now the images are all lined up together. Okay, there's no longer a gap. It does make it a little hard to work with, but we're actually going to be working with that in just a minute. Okay, that's it for 4-6. Next, 4-7, we'll be adding the width and height to the elements. So the first thing is align 10, this image right here. Okay, edit the image element to include the width and the height. So the good thing about the attributes for items like this is that you can pretty much mix and match wherever the attributes can fit. If you want to put them at the very end, you're more than welcome to. If you want to put it at the beginning, you're more than welcome to. So in this case, I'm just going to be adding it to the end only because the source is usually the first thing there. I'll change it up in just a minute once I add the width and height. So the width. The width and the height automatically will be measured in pixels. If you know anything about sizing, pixels are basically the items on your screen that are displayed for how many items you have height and width for, basically the resolution. You can have different sizes once we get to CSS, but the browser automatically reverts to pixels just because that's the standard sizing for the browser. Okay, so we save, we refresh, and now we got a big fish. Like I said before, if you want to change up the order of the attributes, I'm actually going to put the height and the width at the very front. Save, refresh, and it does the exact same thing. So it really doesn't matter where or when they are stated in the element, but industry practice says to put the source first just to make it easier to find. All right, so now we're going to point our relative path for the Alpine image and note the width and the height. So Alpine image right here, width equals 250, height equals 166. Now keep in mind, if you don't specify one or the other, then the browser will automatically scale it for you. So if we go ahead and just remove this height, we save, we refresh, there's not much difference here, but if we modify this to say 350, save and refresh, you can see the size does change and it scales. But if we add the height back of 166, you get a weird disjointed image. We'll get to that in just a minute. So change it back to 250 and we are good. Alright, so we're going to do the same thing to the Caribbean and the desert image, but not the Rome element just yet. So you can either retype this or copy and paste. And paste. Good. Save, refresh, and hopefully visually you have no difference. Alright, so like I said before, the item that we have with the wrong dimensions, we're actually going to be playing with the Rome image. So in this case, we're going to purposely mistype something. The width of 800 and height of 325. Keep in mind whenever you're adding attributes to wrap them in double quotes. It's a good industry practice. Okay, we save, we refresh, and we have a very big Colosseum. That's not supposed to happen. Well, it's also blurry because we have it enlarged. It's a small image being blown up, and therefore it's creating a pixelated image. What we can do is we can actually change it so it has the correct dimensions. What are those? Well, we previously had them at 250 and 166. If we just updated one and not the other, don't forget, you have a very weird image. If you update both, it's going to automatically resize it. If you change one and omit one, it should take care of it. Again, the browser is going to automatically scale and proportionally make it so that it works as well. Okay, and that is it for Activity 4.7. Activity 4.8, we're going to be working with depreciated code just to give you a good idea about what it did and what to look forward to once we get into CSS. So the first thing is on line 10. Here we go. We're going to be adding something called the align attribute. Now keep in mind, the stuff we're doing for this one should not be used. This is just a review of what you should look forward to. What we're doing is we're actually using old HTML attributes that are no longer supported by modern validation. Modern browsers do use them, but it's not good practice to use. If people look at this, they may think this code is from 1999, or you could say a few years ago. But in this case, we're going to be showing you what they do so you can look forward to them once we get into CSS, because HTML is pretty powerful and can do things like this. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to put this first image and align it to the left. Now, once you have the browser, pay close attention to this text and the image itself. Now the image is on the left and the text is to the right of it, along with the other items as well. This is because technically we are floating this image to the left and everything else is just filling up the space on the right. This is basically what the float property will do in CSS, but we're not there yet. Okay, return the brackets. Okay, we're also going to be adding the border element. Now in this case, the border element is going to be adding a predefined or pre-styled border to the image. If you look very closely, you can see a black border around the image. If I increase it to, say, 20, it makes it a little easier to see. There we go, there's a border. Again, this is depreciated. We're going to be working with border and CSS in Chapter 11. All right, next we're going to be adding the H space. Again, this is the padding and margin in CSS. H space equals 20. Save, refresh, and now we have the horizontal space. Let's modify this as well to have V space equals 20 for vertical space. Save, refresh, and now if you take a look, you can actually see some space above the image and below it, although technically you can't see it. So this is going to be a mess to work with. If we highlight it all, go back to the validator, we go to the text box, we paste, we check, and it gives us a whole bunch of errors. Mainly because all these items that we just talked about are depreciated and you should use CSS. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to basically ignore these errors for now, because we know exactly what they were because we added them with the intention of being invalid. We delete them all, we save, we highlight all, copy, go back to the text box, paste, check, and we have no errors to show. Good, okay. So that is it for this Code With Me video. In the next one, we'll be talking about Activity 4.9 and figures, along with talking about captions. If you have any questions regarding these images or the order of it, please let me know in an email or tweet and I'll get back to you the best way I know how.